Okay, coming. Let's get our audience joining us, and I need to share the link. Mm, Good morning. If you're here, can you just put a comment and say hi? Yeah, it's a beautiful Saturday morning, and this is our day to still going out with the PHONICS Unlocked conference, virtual conference. And yesterday we had an amazing time with Mr. with the before and Mr. Before the different one. He really did just to their session. So today, um, this day to first session, we're going to be having a blessing, and honestly, since I sent the invitation letter, I've been struggling on how to I think, but she comes up to just help me, and I'm very keen at pronouncing people's names so that you respect. Because I'm a public speaker and speak good. I adore other languages. So, without further ado, let's get straight into our
Thank you, Tom. But I think our link is having a problem. Can you hear me? I couldn't hear you well, but I know you were introducing me. Yes, most people are not able to join. I tried clicking the link on my mobile device, but it's not working. So you might want to check that out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, better now. Your audio was up earlier.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect. But I don't think anybody has been able to join us yet because the click is not working on my device either. And I
No,
see.
the audience come, they get to watch from YouTube, not from the studio.
Okay,
So,
yes, I clicked the YouTube link. Or just check the
okay,
chat. Yes, I think, I'm on the WhatsApp group, so I'm seeing some chats.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
there.
I'm gonna get the YouTube link. Working with just one device is really, really an issue. I'm gonna get the YouTube link and I'm gonna post it in the group. But someone
Okay.
has joined, and we have people joining now.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much, Tom Phonics, for having me. I'm super excited to be here this morning talking about dyslexia. Yeah, you can bring up my slides if that's okay by
Okay.
you.
So, yeah, I was saying that when you come up here, I'm gonna learn how
Yeah.
to pronounce your surname.
Oh, Ingape.
It has been
or,
trouble.
okay,
Ingiakwe.
okay, no P, so the P goes as in P, 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 P.
Ingiakwe,
Ingape,
right?
yes, or some call it with an accent, Ingape. Whatever
No, I
one
think
works.
I'll go with the normal accent, which is Ingiakwe.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so I'm bringing up your slide, and there you go.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Good morning, Abigail. Good morning. Good to join us. Uh, good.
Welcome. Okay, most people who are actually joining you already have your YouTube link, you see. That's why it's good to be consistent.
Once
Those
you
who don't
start
have
up,
your YouTube link,
I'm gonna go get it and I'll
drop it
send
for
it.
that. Okay, all right. So, once again, thank you all for joining us this morning. And yes, I would like to say happy Easter. Yesterday was Good Friday, and we're looking forward to the resurrection morning, right? Thank you. Thank you all for joining us, spending your Easter with us. I love this season. It's a beautiful season because it reminds me of what God did for us, sending His Son to die for us. So thank you for taking out this period where you should be, just resting, taking out the time to join us in learning more about children with dyslexia. So I believe everyone can see my slides. So today we'll be talking about overcoming phonics difficulties and focus on understanding and addressing common challenges in phonics, such as dyslexia or difficulties with specific sounds. And my name is Blessing Ngape. You can call me the dyslexia coach. So, a little bit more about me. I am the founder of Dyslexia Help Africa. Dyslexia Help Africa is a non for profit arm of what I do, where we create awareness and about dyslexia, free seminars, free awareness events, both online and physical, for people to know more about what dyslexia is. And I'm also the program director at Dyslexia Help Learn Academy. That is our Learn Academy for both children and teachers. So the Learn Academy, we have for kids who have dyslexia, we offer intervention for them. It's both online and physical. And then for the adults, those are the teachers or parents who want to know more about dyslexia. Also, we offer dyslexia training at the Dyslexia Help Learn Academy. I'm also SEN certified by the Cadet Academy here in Abuja, Nigeria. I am also Gillingham trained. Also, Gillingham is one of the best systematic science of reading program approaches for children with dyslexia. I also have the IBCCS certificate. I'm a SEN consultant. I love to work with schools who want to set up an inclusive environment for children with dyslexia or special needs generally. And then also, I was the International Dyslexia Teacher of the Year in 2021. And what that simply means is that I did a lot of work creating awareness and just like what I'm doing right now here with you. And then I have close to a decade experience. So, um, what I'll be sharing with you this morning is something I've used and I've shared with educators for the past 7 years and has worked. So I believe if this has worked for the past 7 years for lots of kids in different settings, then it would definitely work for you. All right. So when you talk about dyslexia and when you talk about struggles, let's look at a bit from these case studies. And these case studies are actually true. I just changed their names and maybe made the story shorter. Let me increase my screen. Okay, because it's making me stream. I think this is better. So let's look at the case study Lily. Lily, she's 8 years old, and her current school will be the fifth school she's been transferred to since she started school, and that's because schools don't have a placement for her at 8. And at 8, she still doesn't know her letter names and the sound. So I'm sure some of you may have kids like that in your class, who most likely that's not the last school they've been in. And I'm talking about a real child. This is not just fiction. I had these students who, when she came to the academy, that was like the fifth school she was coming to because she was 8. And if at 8 you don't know your the letter names, at 8 you don't know your sound, which class should they place you in? And she was even on the big side. So it was quite difficult, even saying you want to place her in a class lower than grade 1. So schools kept rejecting her until we finally accepted her. And then another case study is Abdul. Abdul is 5 years now, and he attends the best school. So currently, I'm in the city of Abuja. So let's say Abdul attends the best school. Money is not a problem for the parents, and in that best school, they have the best phonics instruction teacher. But Abdul still struggles to remember basic phonics instructions that are taught to him, unlike his peers. So it's not a question of the teacher's inability to teach well, because if the teacher has 20 kids, it means 19 of those kids are doing well except Abdul. So that clearly, tells us that the teacher is doing an amazing job, right? But we all know that no child should be left behind. So what can you do to help Abdul? And then let's talk about Dami. Dami can easily articulate his letter sounds. That means he knows his phonemes, right? But struggles with blending them to form words. He's 10 years already, and his parents and teachers are worried about his reading skills. So Dami's situation is different. Dami knows the letter names, Danny knows the sounds they make, the phonics, but that's where it ends. When it's time to bring acts together and blend and pronounce the word or spell, it becomes very difficult for Danny. So you might have all or one of these in your class. But I would like to know in the comments there, have you experienced any of this? Have you come across any of these kids? Maybe you did before, or maybe you currently are now. Maybe they are in your class. Let me know. Let me go to YouTube too so I can check your comments because I can see them here. I like this to be interactive. Okay. So, how many of you have had either a Lily or an Abdul or a Dami or a child struggling with learning phonics in one way or the other in your classroom? Oh wow. Udo says she has all of them in her class. Wow. Well, thank you for being here because I believe you will get something here that will help you help them. Yes, Tibogo, join us from Botswana. I've experienced that, coach. Yes, I know your story. I know the kids, the number of kids you're trying to help over there in Botswana. So thank you all for being here. You know, you being here already shows that aside from being an excellent teacher, you're also passionate and you're passionate and you're compassionate, yes, about helping these children, and you will learn skills that you can apply to help them as you teach them phonics in the classroom. So, what is dyslexia? So, most likely, these kids that are struggling with this, wow, Adeola is also experiencing all of that. So, now, most likely, there is a 60% chance that these kids that are struggling with this have dyslexia. But please, because we've not screened them yet, and don't assume that these kids that have the struggles I just mentioned are dyslexic. So where would you place them now? Where you'd place them now would be kids who are struggling with reading, right? Because we don't have an official diagnosis that they are dyslexic, but they are showing red flags for dyslexia. So what is dyslexia? The International Dyslexia Association describes dyslexia as a specific learning disability. I love to call it difficulty that is neurobiological in origin. Now, when we talk about neurobiological, you can see that first of all, we're saying it is neuro. So it is not just about the biological, it also starts from the brain. It's something that has to do with the brain. And understanding that it has to do with the brain really helps you look at the situation from a different perspective. So you're looking at something that the child cannot help themselves. It has to do with the brain. It's not a behavioral problem. So when you see it first of all as a brain problem, as something that is neuro in origin, you're you know it helps you to be more considerate and to always realize that the child is not just putting up behavior, but the child really can't help it even as much as they try. And it is characterized by difficulties with accurate and or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. And we know that you need all of this to learn phonics, right? So, what does this tell us? That there's going to be a problem when it comes to learning phonics because you're talking about accurate, fluent word recognition, poor spelling, and if you can't spell well, that simply means that you don't know your phonics. And if you can't decode, your decoding abilities are poor, then also means that learning phonics is going to be a problem. Now, I love this definition because I think it relates to all the teachers I know here in Nigeria who have these kids in their classroom. And what does it say? It is actually the 21st century definition of dyslexia. And it says that it is an unexpected difficulty. Now, I always love that word, unexpected difficulty. Give me a moment. I think these are in the wrong ears. My ears are actually tiny, anyways, so it keeps falling. So, it is an unexpected difficulty, and I love that word unexpected because these are kids that are intelligent. I mean, um, for those who mentioned, for Itoro, for Adeola, for Udo, that mentioned that you have these kids. These are not kids that, in quote, you would say are not intelligent. For instance, the example, the case study we looked at Lily. Lily was very outspoken, and I would say more outspoken than most of the adults I know. Because if she comes into a room, like let's imagine this was a physical room and we had all of you here, she would come and she would not shy. She would go straight to you. Let's imagine Tobago. She would go straight to Tobago and said, "Hello, my name is Lily. What's your name?" That's how outspoken she was. You know, she was so good with her verbal skills that when we're having end of the year party, she was the one handling the passion the fashion parade segment. You know, she was calling out the different cultures that were represented, and she was really creative. She was like, "Oh, give up for Ogun State." She'll comment on the beach. She'll comment on their outfit. But then, when you say, "Okay, Lily, can you write your name?" As simple as your name, Lily could not write her name. So it is usually unexpected because if I didn't know what dyslexia is, and looking at Lily, I was like, this is a star girl. I mean, this girl is a star girl. And if she tells me she can't read, I'll be like, "Mm-mm, you're pretending. How can you not read?" And that is a paradox of dyslexia. And that is why we say dyslexia, it is, it is not an intelligent problem. It doesn't mean the child or the individual is unintelligent. So it is unexpected difficulty in reading for an individual who has the intelligence to be a much better reader. And it is most commonly caused by difficulty in phonological processing. So you see why when it comes to learning phonics, this kids will have challenges because it is caused by difficulty in phonological processing. And when you're talking about phonological processing, you cannot talk about that without talking about the brain. Okay, and it affects that child or that individual's ability to speak, to read, and to spell. So you can see where the problem is coming from. So if a child is dyslexic or has red flags for dyslexia, they are definitely going to struggle in your phonics classroom and in other subjects generally. Because, first of all, it starts by just difficulties in learning the phonological sound, and then over time it spreads to other subjects. Because if they have difficulties in learning phonics, it means they're going to have challenges reading, and if they're going to have challenges reading, they're going to have challenges comprehending, and that begins to spread into other subjects, science, arts, and all of the other subjects that you would mention. Now, this already answers, right here on this chat, okay, write in the comments. Everyone here, about five of you, already stated that you have a child in your classroom or even more who have these challenges. So I believe it won't be hard for you to believe this research that says one in five kids have dyslexia. And what this means, what this tells us is that in every classroom, there's at least one child with dyslexia. At least one child who is struggling with reading, who is struggling with phonics. I went to a school um, when the non-profit arm of my organization was creating awareness. So we'll just go to random schools and tell them we just want to teach your teachers, tell them more about dyslexia and how they can help these children. So when we went to this particular school, I was super amazed. And the woman was like, "What is dyslexia?" So first of all, she didn't even know what dyslexia is. So after explaining, just as I just explained to you what dyslexia is, guess what this head teacher said? In fact, I don't think she was sitting in the capacity of the head teacher. I think she was sitting in the capacity of the owner of the school, I would like to assume. And she said, "Mm-mm, that we don't have kids like this and we'll never have kids like this in this school. God forbid, God forbid." That was, I was amazed. I was in shock. It was funny. And she wasn't joking about it. She didn't allow us to take that training because she didn't believe that they had kids like that and they will never have kids like that. But it's not about what you believe or not. It is a fact that in your classroom there is a child who is struggling. It might be mild, it might be severe, but there is a child who is struggling in your classroom. So I'm happy that right here on this event we have teachers who already know that I have these kids who are struggling in my classroom. And that is the first thing, awareness and not being in denial. And when you're in that place, you can now find a solution to help these kids. So let's look at some signs. And there are lots of signs, but I'm basically focusing on signs that have to do with phonics. since this particular event is focused on phonics, and most of the teachers that I hear are teachers who teach phonics or who teach kids how to read. So, some of the things that children with dyslexia struggle with, or the red flags they show, is having trouble learning letter names and remembering the sounds they make. I was in Ruth's class. Yes, I had the opportunity to be there in and out when she was talking. And the phonics and all of the things she was putting us through. A child who's showing red flags for dyslexia will have trouble learning the letter names, will have trouble remembering the sounds they make. So it doesn't mean you're not teaching them. Like I mentioned, 19 kids in your class will be learning well, but then this one child will just not be getting it. And then they also often confuse letters that look similar. And of course, you know that when we're talking about phonics, you can push away graphics. So they need to know the letter B, they need to know what it stands for. So if they're mistaking them, inverting them, there's already a problem. Because when they see a B, they might say that's a D. When they see a P, they might say that's a K. So that's definitely going to affect their reading. So you're going to have challenges there. And then also struggling to read familiar words like cat, especially if there aren't pictures. Now, sometimes we think that, okay, when we're done with teaching phonics, then everything's going to be fine. Mm-mm. Most times they graduate to a new problem, and that's struggling to spell familiar words. Because you would imagine that, okay, now you know k, at, and every child, I mean, almost every average child in KG or at least grade level, grade class one knows how to spell the word cat. But then you see these kids having challenges and having issues. And then also having trouble separating the individual sounds in words and blending those sounds to make a word. So you can see there's like a graduation of problems. Just when you thought that, okay, they've learned their sounds, they're no longer confusing their letters, you're having all of these issues now, bringing them together, trying to form words, all the diphthongs that were mentioned yesterday, all the graphemes, all the phonemes, you know, separating them, the diagrams becomes a very big issue. And then they also have trouble remembering how words are spelled. Because I also remember when Ruth was talking to us yesterday, she was talking about the English spelling rules, right? Yes. So you've told them that, okay, when the E, the Y, the I is followed after a C, it makes a soft sound. It makes a soft sound for C. When it's not followed, it makes it hard. So all of those spelling rules, they will not remember, or they will have a hard time applying it. So you see how frustrating it gets, right? Then they also have poor spelling, like spelling the same word correctly and incorrectly in the same exercise. Now that one can be quite annoying because we're spelling here. On this page, you spelled cat as C-A-T, cat. And then right in the next sentence, you're spelling it as K. Instead of using the C, you're using the cake, K-8. And you're wondering, didn't you just spell it correctly? What is happening? Why are you not thinking? Then we start asking them questions. Why are you not thinking? What is wrong with you? Go and face the wall. Go and take some time out. No outdoor for you. Remember, it's a neuro issue. And then they're also having trouble sounding out new words. Usually when you're teaching CBC words, let's take a word like car. So if you can decode the word car, you can blend the word car. I'm imagining that if I just change that to a j, r, you should be able to say jar. And that might be very, very difficult for a child who is showing red flags for dyslexia or who is struggling with it. And then they also have trouble quickly recognizing common words. I know that in English language, when we teach kids how to read, when we teach them phonics, we also teach them sight words. These are words that are not decodable, right? You just need to know them. That becomes a problem because the child is finding it hard to just know those words. So how do you help that child when they can't get the sight words in their head? You're practicing, practicing, just as Mrs. Ruth told us yesterday. You keep practicing, but it's just not working. What do you do? So are you still with me? Are you still following? Is this connecting? Is it relatable? Yeah, now I'm connected on YouTube. So when I ask questions, I'm waiting for a response so that I will continue because I don't want to be talking to myself. So is this relatable?
Yeah, it is. We are with you, following you.
All right, thank you, thank you. Yes, that makes me feel better. Okay, so now, of course, dyslexia intervention is large. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. I see all your comments now. It's quite large, and when I was thinking about this class. I mean, there are a few people are here who have to take this course, like a 3 month course. So I was like, okay, what can I bring together in an hour to help as many teachers here as possible step out and start helping these children? So I went through, I decided to pick how kids learn how to read. And of course, the first one is phonics, right? They are struggling with identification of letter sounds because I know in phonics classes, sounds are taught first. At least I know about the Jolly Phonics. Sounds are taught first, and that's because when it comes to reading, what you need are sound, right? Not exactly the names of letters. But now, when you're teaching this sound, there are over 44 sounds in English, just as we're also learning yesterday. And you start from the basics, right? But then most of these kids who have red flags are showing red flags for dyslexia will struggle with identification of those letter sounds, of those phonemes. So, how can you help them? Now, one of the ways to help them is to go back to the traditional method, which is teaching letter names and sounds together. And this video I have here is actually a video that shows a family doing that. But I needed multiple screens or I needed to juggle some phonics if we're able to do this. And there wasn't time enough for us to start juggling and all of that. So I won't be playing that now because that will delay us. But I'm on that WhatsApp group, so I'm going to drop a link there for you to see. So most times, 90% of the time, you have to go back to teaching letter names and sounds together. And why do you do that? You teach letter names and sounds together because these kids use the letter names to remember the sounds that particular letter is making. Now, you need to take note of this because you can see that this is already uh, beginning to shuffle your lesson notes, beginning to shuffle your curriculum as a phonics teacher. But then you need to ask yourself this question: am I willing to shuffle this to help this particular child? Or do I prefer to have a one on one with this child? I'm actually going to talk more about this towards the end of my presentation. So you need to decide here. Am I just going to teach everybody letter names and sounds together? Or am I going to teach phonics to the 19 kids? And then I'm going to create a special time when I teach this child that is struggling letter names and sounds all together. Well, that's a decision for you to make. And what does that mean? That means that you're starting, you're not just starting. I know Jolly Phonics starts with S, T, yes, the letters you need to form words. But then it means that your class is going to be different now. Now, that's what we call inclusive education. So, if you're teaching in a school that says they're practicing inclusive education, then it shouldn't even be a question of, it shouldn't even be a question of teaching that child separately. It should be a question of bringing in a strategy that can work for all the kids. So if you have a school that says they're practicing inclusive education, you can bring this to them. You can tell them truly, if we are practicing inclusive education and we have children in our class who are struggling with learning, then we need to tweak this phonics curriculum a bit to meet the needs of these kids. But if your school is not practicing inclusive, they might want to choose between the options I just mentioned. So what that means is that you're going back to the traditional method of teaching. You're teaching them the letter and then you're teaching them the sound. So this is the letter A, and A makes a sound ah. This is the letter B, and B makes a sound B. So you're going to teach all of this from the beginning to the end to Z. And why? Let me give you um, an example of what is happening in the brain. So let's imagine you've been thrown into a pool and you can't swim, or into a river and you're drowning, and then they give you a life jacket. So with that jacket, you're able to hold on to it. And although you can swim, that life jacket or that help, whatever you were given to, is helping you to float. So you're not drowning anymore. So kids who are struggling with dyslexia, when they are in your classroom and you're teaching phonics and they really cannot connect, it's like they are drowned in a river of confusion about the sounds you're trying to teach. And you know what is that life jacket? That life jacket are the letter names, because they use the letter names to remember the sounds. So, okay, this is letter A, and A make the sound ah. One thing I've realized for kids who have learned sounds without letters that are dyslexic is that they never get to know that, for instance, this letter is letter B. They only get to know that this is B. So usually maybe a teacher has done a good job, has taught them all of the sounds, but then it's time to read, it becomes a problem, and then they bring them to the academy. And you ask them, what letter is this? They tell you letter B. They cannot differentiate when you ask them what letter is this and what sound does this letter make. And when it comes to phonics instruction, which we call the science of reading for children with dyslexia, you need to understand that this is a letter and this letter makes a sound. And I think yesterday, um, okay, the mister taking us on multisensory spoke about the importance of science of reading. And then what else do you do? So you're going back to the beginning, right? Teaching them letter names, teaching them letter the phonemes, and then apply discrete teaching. If you work with kids with autism, you will understand this word more. So when we talk about discrete teaching, we're talking about breaking whatever you're teaching in bits and pieces. So let's go back to you teaching the kids letter names and sounds together. You're not going to start arranging all of the letters on the board on your chart and say, okay, this is A, it makes A, this is B, it makes B, down to Z. No, you're going to break it. Depending on the cognitive ability of that child, you might need to pick two letters at a time, or three, or four. So maybe today your lesson is focused on A and B. If they get it, and then you come tomorrow, you try to check on their previous knowledge, and they are able to still know that, okay, this is A, it makes A, this is B, it makes B. Then you move again, maybe three letters, C, D, E. So you break it into pieces. You don't teach everything at the same time. And I know this is quite challenging because, um, as a phonics teacher, and I think that argument also came up yesterday when it was like, should phonics be a subject, or should it be, a general skill that this kid needs to learn in school? There's a curriculum you need to follow, and you have a timeline. By the time the term is ending, you need to have finished. That is why I said if your school is an inclusive setting, then they need to know this, because most schools will tell you they are offering inclusive education, but they don't understand what it entails. So if you have a school where you're working, or where you teach, and they say they are offering inclusive education, you can bring this to them and say if we're truly offering inclusive education, then it means that even with our curriculum, we need to tweak it, or we need to make our the resource room. Most people use the resource room for children with learning difficulties. We want to use a resource room and have a special curriculum with these kids so that the other kids are not too delayed. So, because you need to break that into pieces. And when you come for the next class, you can move to C and D until you're able, like we say in Nigeria, hit your chest. That child knows that this is the letter A makes R, this is the letter B, and B makes B. And then you need to use a multisensory approach. If you say using this approach, when we talk about the science of reading, during my 3 month course, I teach what we call the structured literacy program, and it's for 3 months. But usually, when I'm going for seminars, I know I don't have 3 months with these educators. So what I teach them is how to use a multisensory approach in teaching these kids. And if you were here yesterday, that's exactly what I'm talking about. If we're not here, they might need to talk to some phonics to help get you a link to that, because I won't be going through on that again. That will take us more time altogether. But when we talk about the multisensory, giving you an example, if we're working on letters, right? You just don't have your chart, or you don't just have the letter on the screen. You need to have letters that the skills the kids can touch. So, for instance, this is one, right? So, if I'm going to be working on A and B, it means I'm going to bring A and B to the class, as many copies as I can to go around. I mean, if you don't have a crowded classroom, that is an advantage. And they need to feel it. And that's why I always say that when you're offering help for children with dyslexia, the other kids benefit as well. Beyond just learning, they get to learn it deeply. So this other child is also feeling the letter B. And what works is when you have a surface that is rough. So this particular one is not. For teachers who teach and you need to decorate your classroom, those glittery papers that are rough, right? That's a good one because one is catchy and then it's also very rough. If you can do that, you can use sandpaper to cause the letters out. If you can do that, right there in your classroom, you can cut out a letter, put glue, and pour sand on it. It glues, and then you can use it as well. So they are feeling it. So it's not just about seeing the letter A. You're using tactile, you're using visual, you're using auditory, you're engaging all of the sensory, all of their senses, and that helps them to remember. Another method you can use is the Orton Gillingham method of writing in the air. But you need to be careful, you need to be sure that your kids are forming the letters correctly so that they are not just writing in the air, that they are forming it correctly. So I can go A makes a sound ah, or they can also write on their decks. Okay, you can't see me now, but I'm on the table, sitting on the table now. So they take their two hands, make sure it's two. This two, very important. And this part, because of the senses, they also write A makes the sound ah. It's a A makes the sound ah. And you can also incorporate that with the jolly phonics because I love what jolly phonics also does. Onto my arm. So you can find a way to combine the letters you've taught them and then them realizing that ah, ah, so you can see that, I mean, when you're teaching that class of diverse classroom, and you need to learn that skill because we are getting to that point, or we really are there, where you should be able to meet as a classroom teacher, you should be able to meet the needs of the kids in your classroom. You need to realize that all of the kids in your classroom don't learn the same way. Some of these kids are struggling, but let me tell you what, it's not even dyslexia because we brought some of these kids to us, and what we just had to do was make the teaching multi-sensory and they were able to learn. So it wasn't even um, a dyslexia problem. It was more of a teaching problem. It wasn't a learning problem. By the time we changed the strategy, they learned it. So you need to understand that you have diverse learners in your class. So when teaching, bring in instruction materials that can appeal to sight, that can appeal to hearing, that can appeal to kinesthetic. Those are the keys that like to move around, that can appeal to tactile learning. Are we learning something? So now that they've learned their letter names, their sounds, all of the diagrams you want to teach them, it now comes to blending because now you need them to put those phonemes together and form words. And that's another hurdle altogether. Because okay, let's start with simple words like cat. Yes, I love to use cat because every child knows how to spell the word cat. Now you know k, now you know a, now you know t. Put them together, blend, there's a problem. So how do you help? First, you need to encourage your student to think out aloud. And when I drop that link for you that I said I was going to show you on letter names and sounds, I love because it was even a family. They were sitting together and they were working together with this child that clearly has a reading issue. But I love how they were asking him questions and making him think out loud. So you want them to think out loud. Don't blend your words quietly. So your sync act, cut the sounds out, try to blend them together. Sometimes what I do is if they're struggling with three words, if they're struggling, for instance, yes, I've been using cat, so let me have cat here. If they're struggling with three words, and it's cat, right? So just imagine in your head that what we have here is CAT, not the picture. I'll try to remove the T and see how they can do along with the cat. And then after that, I'll put the T and say, okay, blend cat. But whatever you're doing with them, please ensure that you're thinking out loud, ensure that you're hearing what is happening in their brain. Because sometimes you can be amazed at what you're thinking about. And when you hear what you're thinking, you can better help them. Okay. So they shouldn't be quiet when they are blending. I always tell my kids that when you're trying to blend a word or when you're trying to spell a word, you cannot be quiet. You need to hear yourself to know if you're right or if you're wrong. Because we're talking about speech sounds. So it's not just about you thinking about it in your head, but it's time for you to bring it out of your lips. And when you bring it out of their lips, you can get into their brain through their lips, and you're able to help them better there. Okay. And then also teach spelling rules and syllable segmentation. Now, from yesterday, if you're in yesterday's class, you already know that English has lots of rules, lots and lots of rules. But then, when it comes to teaching kids who are struggling with learning, you want to only focus on some specific spelling rules. And those are the ones that fall into the six syllables. Now you have the open syllable. So when I'm mentioning this, let me know which of them you're familiar with and which of them you're not familiar with, because I can take out more time to explain it in the WhatsApp group. Okay, the open syllable, and usually, of course, when I teach the open syllable, I I teach that I teach that when I'm teaching two-letter words. The closed syllables, I teach that when I'm teaching the CVC. You have the bossy R. Okay, you have the bossy R. You have the silent E. You have the consonant L. And then you have the vowel pair. Now, there are different rules. But when you're able to teach them these six syllables, you're already putting them on a road to start reading. The same way we say in Jolly Phonics that when you teach them the basic sound, S, T, P, they can start reading, right? When it comes to children who are struggling with dyslexia or with phonics instruction, when you teach them those six syllables, you're already putting them on the path to start reading. And then after that, you can then start teaching all of the other divers and thousands of spelling rules that English has. But this six is science proven even by the Autumn Gillingham approach. Open syllable, closed syllable, bossy R, silent E, the consonant L, that's C plus LE, and then vowel pair. And then after that, that's vowel teams. After that, you then start teaching all of the diagrams, all of the plenty other things that Ms. Ruth was talking about yesterday. Okay? So, Of these rules I mentioned, how many have do you are you familiar with? You can drop that in the chat. I understand that we were ahead of you, but drop that in the chat for me. So I mentioned open syllable, close syllable. I mentioned the silent e. I mentioned the bossy r. I mentioned the consonant l, and I mentioned the vowel teams or vowel pairs. So let me know which one you're familiar with. Okay, in the comment. And if you're not familiar with anyone, let me know as well. Okay, no, I'm not done. Then apply creative blending styles. I mean, I've done crazy creative things just teaching kids how to blend. And I'm just going to share one. One of them is what I call the driving strategy. So, for instance, if we have this word, let's use the word cap. You can see cap here. So, for instance, we're picking the word cap, and I want my kids to blend. Most time they just go k, k. I mean, you're even wondering why they are struggling with because you think it's easy. I mean, since you know this, shouldn't it be easy? But like we said earlier, it is a neuro issue. Okay, so just calm down. But then there was a strategy I used for one of my students that worked. In fact, it was so frustrating that each time we're having that class, the mom would angrily leave because she was getting so angry. They were actually online classes. So what I did was that I did the driving method. I don't have a toy car here close by, but let's imagine that this is a car, right? And she writes the word down. So you're going to drive this, and this car has no brakes until you come to the end of the sound, and the end is p. The beginning is what? The beginning is C, right? We're looking at cap. The beginning is C, right? And the ending is P, right? So we are driving from point C to point P, and you're not allowed to use your brakes. You're not allowed to pause this car while you drive. So we start from C and they go car, so they can't stop. So at the beginning they'll go car. I say you can't stop until you reach P. Of course, it was very funny at the beginning. Should I say funny? No, frustrating. That's the word. It's funny now because I'm talking about it. But it was frustrating at the beginning. And we were always keeping water because as you go, your throat is getting dry, is getting stressed out. But it worked at the end, right? Because you go car, I would say you can't stop driving this car until you get to put cap, cap, and we just kept practicing until she finally got it. So I mean, I didn't see that method anywhere. I just got frustrated and I looked for it. I was like, okay, this can work. One of the other methods we also used was the singing method. She loved to sing. So, for instance, if we're singing, you just see our tone just going high. Very interesting class, I must tell you. So, when you start singing, you're not dropping that tone until you get to P. So, you can't stop. I'll tell her, don't stop. Don't. If you stop, you're grounded. And we just continued that way. And of course, it was hard at the beginning. Our throats were getting dry. We would have lots of water to drink. But after a week plus, she started getting it and we're making progress. Okay, let me look at what is happening. Okay. So we have two people. Okay. We have a lot of people here who are not familiar with this. So maybe some phonics, you might need to have another training on specific phonic instruction for children with dyslexia. Okay. So now you have done the car, all of the things, and finally, you guys are now blending. Praise God. But now sight words, because sight words are not decodable. They are not decodable at all. Drop some sight words for me in the comments if you're with me. Okay, I will use some of the examples you're dropping for me. And then you have to do sight words. But now sight words are not decodable. So what are you going to be driving exactly? There's nothing to drive. And really, when it comes to children with dyslexia, most of them are not good with cramming. Have a parent that has a child with dyslexia and have a child who has speech challenges. Now, the one who has dyslexia can't cram words. Sight words are an issue. The ones that is not dyslexic, the problem now is that she doesn't decode. She crams too much. So she's having issues reading. So you can see the difference. Dyslexics want to know, why is this word this way? If you're saying this is cup, why is it cup? Don't just tell me that this is cup. If you want me to remember, then tell me why it is cup. Because if you tell me why it is cup, then I can get to use that strategy and figure out that word whenever you're not around. Of course, the first thing is to try to teach them right without teach them to cram it like we do with sight words. But like I said, 90% of the keys will not work for them. So if it's not working, what do? You try as much as possible to make the sight word decodable. So for instance, we have some two-letter words that are not as sight words, right? I think so. SO is a sight word, right, for two-letter words. So when I'm teaching my kids that particular sight word, I make it decodable by letting them know that you have s, and then you have, because I love to teach them and the short and the long vowels. That's the vowels bearing their name. I think we learned something like that too yesterday. A E I O U, and then also understanding that you have the A E I O U, but that's totally separate. But I let them understand that, okay, when you get to this point, the vowel here is bearing its name, so blend it that way. So you have your s and you have your o, so you have so. So when they come across that word, I'm like, the first sound there is what? S. The second sound is a long vowel. So what it's bearing its name, what will it be? Oh, so blend it together. Okay, I'm seeing some here. Good. Thank you for the word saw. Good. Then so let's use she. Let's start with she. So she, they need to know that sh. Then the vowel there is bearing its name, E. So they blend it, she. So when they see, they're like, okay, I have sh. And then this vowel here is bearing its name. So I have she. And then for saw, uh, we have the vowel teams, A, U, O, right? So just think about it. You have S. Then assume that your AW there is your vowel pair O. So when you bring it together, you have saw. So you try to make the word decodable for them so that when they see it, they can use that strategy and pronounce that word. In fact, one had a problem with said, SAID. I just had to go through the back door and use A. I say, when you see AI, remember A, but just remember that this one is said. So at first, what they were doing, that they would decode it as S, AI. Let me drop it so that you understand what I'm saying. Okay. So at first, they will go S, aid, said. Oh, but it's not said, it's said. But they were using that strategy, that decodable strategy, to get the word said. And then they remember that, okay, but it's said. So when it comes to sight words, make the words decodable. And then build vocabulary. Teach them the meaning of words. It is so important. So, so important. Yes, okay. Someone is confirming that the word said is quite difficult for most kids. It is so important that you build vocabulary. Now, give you this is a true life experience. I had a student that could spell the word elephant, but was never in a very long time was not able to spell the word was. Was as in, okay, I don't have a board here, so I'm using and that will tell you I'm a dyslexia teacher. I was even about using multiple screens. Now I'm using my YouTube chat here. And would always spell the word as was. Always. That's just a three-letter word. I mean, how can you spell ELEPHANT, a seven-letter word, without stress? But then a three-letter word, you're always writing WOS, WOS, WOS. That is because for an elephant, he could connect that to an elephant. He knows what an elephant is. Is that what I have here? Oh, perfect. So he knows that this is an elephant. He has a picture of it. But please, someone, can you show me a picture of was? Does anyone in this room has a picture of was? What does was look like? What does it look like? Can you make a picture of it in your heart aside from knowing that it's WAS? I mean, if it was a class that I could engage with, I would have called somebody to describe was for me. So, because he knew the meaning of this, it was easier for the brain to remember. The brain could not, there was no life jacket for was. There was no life jacket for was. So, as much as possible, let your kids know the meaning of the words you're teaching them because that is going to help them to remember those words. So, if you have sight words, so you can drop sight words for me in the chat here that you can have pictures for. Get the pictures for them, okay? Then practice, 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 practice. Mrs. Ruth yesterday also mentioned the importance of practicing. You just have to keep practicing. You can't get tired and you can't get stuck. And you can stop. And let me tell you one of the reasons why you need to do that is because when you talk about the working memory, right? And you talk about the brain. This is not in my slides, but this will help you. Now, working memory, that is an information that I most likely just need for now and won't need it again. So you can think of those information like most of the the information we use during our exams. Most of what we do is just knowledge that we need to get into our head, get into the exam hall, drop it there and come out, especially in the Nigerian education system. So it's just an information that you need now, and after then it's gone. So most times when you're teaching kids, there are three stages. You have the working memory stage. They only use that information at that point in time, and as you're leaving the classroom, it's gone. They can't remember. But then you need to keep practicing. Practicing moves it from working memory to short term memory. Short term memory here means that, okay, you taught them. By the time you come in tomorrow, they might still remember. But if you don't teach it again, they will not remember. It is only in the short term memory. So you need to keep practicing until it now gets to the long term memory, and that is where it stays. For instance, I know my name is in my long term memory, is there, and I know it. So you need to keep practicing, practicing, practicing. So as I round off, these are some of the things you should note. That some of these kids might need one-on-one intervention. Now you know the kids you're teaching, right? Some of them might need one-on-one intervention. Maybe you're looking at this child and you're saying, this one, I need to pull you out into the special needs room or the special needs unit to teach you. And then there are some that are not so severe that what you need to do is just to tweak your entire lesson to fit the needs of every child in your class, like I mentioned earlier when I started this particular session. So, summary of what we've done. I mean, if you were to go with something, summary, phonemes, and in teaching them phonemes, teach letter names and sounds together, practice discrete teaching, break them into pieces. Don't teach phonemes at the same time. Then blending, make sure they're thinking aloud, use spelling rules and syllable segmentation. I mentioned that earlier. And then creative blending skills. And then when it's time for sight words, make the sight words decodable, build vocabulary, and then practice, practice, practice so that you can move from the working memory to the short term memory and then to the long term memory. But then you need to know that there are no limits. Every child can learn. Okay, it doesn't matter the struggles you're having with that child in the classroom. You first of all need to have a mindset that they can learn. No child is a lost cause. It might be difficult teaching some kids, but always remember that dyslexia is more of a teaching problem than a learning problem. So if you're able to sort out the teaching problem, you're able to find strategies that work for that neurodiverse kid, then they will learn. This means that when taught in the right way, with the right methods consistently. Now, these words I should have put these words in bold. Taught in the right way with the right methods consistently in a creative way, these kids can learn. Okay, so there are no limits. Every child can learn. So maybe you might want to type that in the comment for me. There are no limits. Every child can learn. There are no limits. Every child can learn. So you can get in touch with me because I know some of you might have questions. I'm also on the WhatsApp group. You can drop your questions there. You can contact me physically if you're in Abuja. My phone number, email is there. So thank you so much for your rapt attention, and most especially thank you so much to Phonics for having me today. God bless you. So once again, happy Easter to everyone who is here. Jesus is the reason for this season. I hope you know what we're celebrating, right? He died for you, and that's because he loves you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Blessing. And that was scintillating. Let me use a big word. That was scintillating and that was awesome. Thank you very much. I learned a lot, and even though I know that I'm the host, I just have to be online, at least listening to everything, every word, because I am the host. I am the virtual assistant. I am the committee manager. I'm also the designer, and I'm also the quoter. So I just I have to take everything, and thank you very much. We've learned a lot. The highlights will be coming very soon, and I think from what you've said, and I actually didn't know that you were in the group. Honestly, I didn't notice that you were in the
Yeah, I've
group.
been quiet. I've actually been in and out of the sessions since yesterday.
Thank you, and I'm glad because you were making references to, the speakers of yesterday, and it actually made me, just smile. I like. Thank you. I'm learning from you though. Really, really learning from you. Okay, so quickly, questions. If there are any questions, we've run out of time. If there are any questions, please can you drop them in the group? Sorry, not in the group here, and let's do that immediately. Okay, let me just say something. Abigail, soar. Yeah, Miss Blessing talked about making sight word decodable, and that actually is one way to tweak your lesson, even though sight words are supposed to be read by sight. But I know that's you being creative. And Miss Blessing has given us a clue on how to make sight words. It's very difficult though, but you just have to be creative. You just have to be
Exactly.
creative. But when it comes to soar, soar isn't a sight word. And that one thing about phonics must be words that are decodable. Okay,
Mhm.
so SOR is you have and the AW. That's when you're teaching digraph A or okay AW rather, giving the sound or. Don't worry. From time to time, we're gonna be talking about each of the sounds, and I hope you all stay for long. And uh, my laptop should get back to its. I mean, it should be
Sure,
alive. Then.
sure,
We'll
sure.
start treating the sounds one after the other. And yes, yeah, I think I've learned about the six syllables, the open syllable, the closed syllable, the bossy R, the silent E. Mm. Okay,
Awesome.
thank you thank you very much. And been teaching this, and for me, I don't want to front the instructor or someone that knows. I am learning. I'm learning.
I'm seeing a
Thank you.
question here.
Okay. Yeah. Uh, any question? Drop
I
the
think I'm
one.
seeing one that is
Okay.
over.
Okay. This one here. I'm bringing it up. There's this
Okay, yes.
situation where learner starts go from standard one. Say, actually, Teboga and Gabana is not a Nigerian, and I think he's from Botswana. So so theirs is called standard one. Now, knowing how to read and write in the process around I think standard three or four, it turns out to be the opposite. So the question should be, what is the
What
cause?
happened?
Yeah, what happened?
Okay, so a lot can happen. Most kids who struggle with learning. So, for instance, let's imagine we have a child who actually has tendencies for dyslexia, but started out with me, and maybe I'm the teacher in standard one. Definitely, that child is going to soar because I'm seeing the signs, I know the signs, and people might not even notice that there is a problem. But then, if that child moves to standard three, and there is another teacher now with him who doesn't give the help I give, that child will start struggling. That is one. And then two, when it also comes to dyslexia, in fact, some kids don't even show, kids who have mild dyslexia don't even show any struggles until they get to secondary school. Now I don't know what standard that is in Botswana, but that's after primary school. They get to secondary school because work starts getting tougher and tougher and tougher, then it becomes a challenge for them. In fact, some don't even struggle until they get to the tertiary institution. I've had to work with someone in Lagos State University, who said that yes, she had a bit of struggles in primary and secondary, but she was able to manage, and nobody even knew she was struggling. So, for instance, if people are reading for an hour, she knows that she has to read for at least 2 3 hours. So she had self-regulating skills. But when she got to the university, it was like it was overwhelming, and she just started having lots and lots of carryovers. So in a situation like that, you'd be saying that my child has been smart. She was doing well in primary school, doing well in secondary school. She's now in the university, maybe because she's now partying or not paying attention, or she now has a boyfriend that is distracting her. That's what's happening. But this child has actually been struggling since the work just got overwhelming. So it could be three of those things. One, maybe a good phonics instructor when he was in standard one, and then someone who really doesn't understand and doesn't give him attention now that he's in grade three. Or it could be that there was mild dyslexia, and as he gets into higher grades, it gets difficult for him. So grade three work is getting too overwhelming for him. So it could be any of these things. Tebogo, hope
Oh,
I was able to answer your question.
okay. Thank you very much. And that was okay. Let's quickly go to another question here from Tessie. Please, under normal conditions, would you advise the letters should be taught? I think, is it the sound first, a letter first, sound first, a letter first?
Okay, those who have been in my training, because I am an advocate for inclusive education. So the same way I would teach a child with dyslexia is the same way I would teach a child who is not dyslexic, because science already shows that kids who are neurotypical, that's kids who don't have dyslexia, even benefit more from using strategies that we use for children with dyslexia, either exercises or activities. So I would say okay. I think I was not seeing myself in a while. Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, okay, thank you. So when I go through the training, I always say teachers should teach letters and sounds together. Now, I always say, what is the disadvantage? Or because I've asked teachers these questions, teachers in Ghana, teachers, all of the teachers I've got to work with, I always say, you talk to me, what is the advantage and the disadvantages of teaching letters and sounds together? And how much weight am I
Okay.
fluctuating or
Yes,
is it
I
just on
think
my
the network was actually glitching, and you're back
oh
now. Pause, then it's gone. Let's
okay.
hope that you are
Let me do
back.
this. Okay, if that goes again, I'll just connect with my phone.
Okay, we just have a few minutes to go though. Okay, thank you, Cabana, for responding to that. Yes, clear now. Okay, Tessie, I actually wanted responding to that, but it's not my floor. So Miss Blessing should do that, and maybe sometime in the future, I'm gonna talk about the letter sound
Yeah, I think I'll
debate.
connect with my phone so you can take
Okay,
this
let's
one.
just that's the only question. So let's just round up so that we can. Are you here? Okay, so while Miss Blessing is trying to change over, thank you very much to everyone that has been part of today's session this morning. Um, my session will be coming up again today. I'm gonna just drop it in the group why my session will be coming up, but trust me, you all are gonna get more of it. And so, but means Mrs. Ololade will be coming up this evening, and she's gonna that will round up, and I think we're gonna have another session for Q&A discussion. What you would love to know and what you love to learn in the coming future, because this is just a conference where we have instructors or speakers coming to present, and I'm sure they've actually made justice to the topics given to them.
Am I
Okay,
stable?
so
I'm always
okay,
stable.
okay, let's we have less than 5 minutes to go, so let's.
Okay, so let me answer that question. If network goes off, then I'll just answer the question on the WhatsApp group. So why do we teach sounds first? I mean, if there's any other reason, please let me know in the comments. But all of the answers I've heard is that with sounds first, the kids can start reading immediately. First, why do we teach sounds first? So the kids can start learning immediately. Then why do we teach some specific sound so that the kids don't need to wait till they learn all of their sounds before learning how to read right? So those are the questions I've had. But then if you have kids who are being left behind, why the rush when you can just teach letter names and sounds all together? So, in an inclusive setting where you have kids who are lagging behind, who have, and we already mentioned that 1 in 5 kids have dyslexia. So, I would always go for letter names and sounds together. This is the name of this letter, this is the sound this letter makes. Let's first of all, have finished that up, and then we can start learning basic things. So, under normal conditions, I will teach the letter um, names and sounds together. But if you're
Okay,
working with your child, okay, we have another question.
yeah, in 1 minute, let's do that, please. What can
Okay.
I do to help a child who, after all this effort to help him learn, won't talk and can't even encode? Sometimes the child can be quiet in class but still gets everything you teach.
Okay. So you need to find a way to make them talk because they should talk. And that's where counseling comes in. I mean, as a teacher, you're a counselor, you're an emotional coach, you're lots of things. We have this kid that doesn't talk. But then I found out when he likes to talk, when it has to do with a game that he likes, or when I tell him that after this, when we're done with this, and if you impress me, you're going to play this particular game. And when he was playing this game, he was talking. That was how I even noticed that he can talk because he did something, he was able to encode a word. I gave him a game to play, and then he was playing the game and talking. I was like, is this my student that is talking this way? So I started word. Word, a reward that works for your child, a reward that makes your child want to talk. So you need to find out what your child likes and use it as a reward. Any
Okay,
other
thank
questions we answered on the WhatsApp group?
thank you very much, and that is a wrap. So thank you, Miss B, and see you in the group. So bye everyone. I'm see you in the evening for the last session for this Phonics Virtual Conference. Bye.
All right then. Bye.